5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And it's live.
This is Leicester Till I Die TV. Watch and subscribe on YouTube and listen on your podcast platform.
And there we are. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome along. Well, it's an afternoon show, but we've got a match tonight, so it's better this way. And we are joined by royalty today. And I don't mean Tom. We've got PSR royalty, but I don't know whether that's particularly a title you want. Stefan, hello, how are you doing?
It's all right. Yeah, I'll take it. It's good. It's good. I'm good. How are you?
Not so well. If you take football out of my life, I'm all right. If you throw football in it, I'm like, I've got no hair left. Look, let's get down to it, to the elephant in the room. It's PSR. Love it or hate it, and I don't know anybody that loves it. We're stuck with it. Leicester seem to have been dodging this bullet for years now. At the start of every season, it's, we're going to get a points deduction this season. Is it going to be this season we get hit by it? And it's like, I just want to enjoy the football. And the thing I'm reading at the moment is that, and I think you commented on it as well, that, when are we going to hear? I mean, we had the meeting in December. Thought they would have let us know before the January transfer window. Then it was the middle of January. I mean, are they going to come and finally say to us in sort of April, sorry, we're docking 10 points off you?
Look, it's a bit odd, I have to say, because I think the news was that it was going to be which week was it? At the end of November, not even the beginning of December, the hearing.
Yeah.
Now, if you think about what the hearing was, there's a question mark over whether Leicester deny the charge or whether they accept the breach, and the hearing then just becomes effectively a sanction hearing. Because if you think about these cases and the way they work,
I think you've paused there.
Two parts to them. One is the liability, i.e., is there a breach? And then
we're struggling at the moment, Stefan.
Okay.
Sorry, we got one was the liability. Yeah. I think he's in a bad area. You're back.
Yeah, sorry, I can see you. I can try and get on a different Wi-Fi here if you want.
You are. It is just breaking up a little bit. Yes, it's.
Hang on a sec.
That's fine. That's fine.
Right, let's see.
It's always the way with the world technology, isn't it?
Hopefully it's stable. Okay, so you've got two parts to it. One is the liability part, and one is the sanction part. Liability, did they do it? And if they did do it, what's the sanction? And what are the parties will put forward their arguments for effectively mitigation and aggravation. I.e., why there shouldn't be an enormous penalty for whatever the breach is. Now, it appears from memory that we accepted we were going to have, let's say, £20 million miss, something in that sort of order. I think that was what was. I don't know whether it was briefed, but that was kind of the perception that was out there.
Right.
20 million quid is significant in the context of the target that they were trying to hit. Now, there is a question as to how it will be looked at by the Premier League panel, which I can get into in detail, but I can't even remember what the original question was now. I think it was more about the timing. So let's just stick on the timing. So the timing, I don't understand it. I mean, it should be out by now, because even if it was a full hearing that looked at liability and sanction, we've had, 6 weeks? That should have been enough, really. So I think I would expect it any day now. I sort of half expected it to be today.
Right.
The reason I say that is just because we've got past that first couple of weeks of January. People get back in the office. You know, they confer about the drafting, and then they send it out, let's say, Monday morning for a release on the Tuesday. But it hasn't come.
No.
Look, bottom line is it must be soon, because they're also going to want to have sufficient space in the calendar for there to be an appeal.
Yes.
And then on top of that, the bad news is I think there's an issue for 24-25.
So the current 3 years, because it's a 3-year period, isn't it? So this takes us up to 22-23, does it?
No, so the 22-23, you remember you successfully defended that on the basis that nobody had jurisdiction for it. Which was well argued, but in some ways just kicked the ball down the road, because we know that they breached for 22-23. We know that they breached by £19.5 million. We know that because that's in the complaint. So on the 17th of July, that was confirmed to be a 19.5 breach for 22-23. So, but of course, we know that Nick DeMarco successfully argued that they shouldn't be liable for anything, because they weren't. They sort of fell into this hole within the league, and therefore they effectively nobody could challenge them. Now,
I was going to say, Stefan, is there a chance? I know it's a rolling thing as well, but it is a 3-year cycle, right? We have a deal now with Bilal El Khanous out on loan, but it's a guaranteed amount of £20 million coming in. Would that impact this year at any all? Or are we talking that's further down the line as well?
No, and I think this is part of the problem. I mean, we are sort of going all over the place, but I think part of the problem for 24-25 is that you had very little in transfer profits, which means that whereas in the previous 2 years you had £70 million in each of those years in transfer profits, within the actual financial year of 24-25 you didn't have very much at all. And then in terms of future potential deals, there's a bit more flexibility as to in which year you recognise those. So if you're the selling club, you can effectively recognise it when you're certain that it's going to happen, or you can choose to recognise it when it actually crystallises. So that was a trick that was used, for example, by Chelsea and Newcastle, where Chelsea's the seller were able to recognise something in 1 year, and Newcastle as the buyer were able to recognise it in the other. So it may well be, in relation to that particular player, that you decide that you need to recognise it now because it's certain. But of course, that's 25-26, the current season, and not the seasons that we're currently talking about.
And I'm guessing because in the summer, I mean, we look to be trying to be able to, or we're trying to get ourselves in order. We're getting rid of the big player, the big wage earners. We've got rid of Cody. We're trying to get rid of Winks. Well, Winks will go at the end of the season anyway. But in the summer, we got rid of, I think it's up to about £80-90 million worth of players. never paid any incoming transfer fees. But again, that wouldn't be applied to this period, I'm presuming.
Well, there's two aspects to it. So one, you were reducing the wage bill. Yes, so that was positive. The problem is a lot of those players that left were not generating any profit at all. They're either out of contract or players that delivered only a small amount of profit from PSR, which meant that clearly last season was a disaster in terms of where they would have expected to be in terms of the budget. I think they would have performed worse than budget. They would have received less Premier League money than budget. I can't remember what your cup runs were, but I can't recall them being significant. And so I don't think there was much good news coming out of last season. And you went into last season in a position that was not good, and we know that because they were charged. So that's why I worry about 24-25 as well. And then there's something slightly odd going on with 24-25. I'm just putting this out there, right, in terms of painting the picture, because I could sugarcoat it and tell you everything's going to be fine, right? But some of it, I have got some good news for you, which potentially good news, but we haven't got to that yet. But the Premier League last season, the equivalent week last week, put out the announcement that said everybody had passed. Although they made some funny comment about Leicester in that announcement a year ago. This year they didn't put out any announcement, and they haven't yet confirmed the position in respect of any team. And I have to think that it's something to do with your current case. And once the current case has been decided, I think they're going to say that you've breached 24-25. I can't be sure, but that's what I think is going to happen.
Do you think I know Tom's got a question, I'll come to that in a second, but do you think that, certainly as a fan, I'm thinking just accept it. This season, we're not going to go up. Hopefully we won't be going down, depending on how many points. Just accept it and let's move on. Because the more we kick it down the road, that's going to pay everybody off. You can't exactly say, well, they're going to give us a couple of points back for good behaviour.
Yeah. And this was something I raised a long time ago, actually, as a complexity of the situation, because if you object and you fight these things, then you lose the ability to say, well, we should have mitigation for fast admission and full cooperation, because certainly Leicester couldn't really argue that that's what they did. Leicester couldn't have argued any harder that they hadn't breached, but it paid off for them in terms of 22-23, as we know, because they won the legal argument. Had that gone against them, the legal argument, they would have had the book thrown at them as part of that process. So yes, you can admit it. They may well have admitted everything for 23-24 PSR, the one that was adjudicated in November. If they did do that, then again, it's slightly surprising that we don't have the decision as to how many points. And we should talk about how many points it could be as a deduction, assuming that they are found to have breached. I can talk you through what that looks like.
That's part of your question, isn't it, Tom? So go ahead.
But I think your point is well made. You get to a point where, okay, you won the 22-23, you've probably breached for 23-24, and you probably ended up admitting it in the hearing if you didn't admit it before. So when it gets to 24-25, admit it and seek maximum mitigation, and we can talk about what that might look like. But I appreciate there's a lot of speculation as to what might happen in all of this situation, but focusing in on the parameters around 23-24, the November hearing, and how many points do you get? So a lot of the press has said it's going to be 12 points. And that's because you look at the EFL rules, you look at the EFL historic cases, and they say, blah, 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 12 points before mitigation. Now, I say something slightly different, which is this is a Premier League case and is not an EFL case. And it's not, whilst it's not straightforward because it was something that was taken on from the EFL, it is governed by the Premier League's rules. So I think, and this, it's quite hard to know which way the panel will go, but I think that it should be the Premier League's precedent or authorities, shall we say, because they're not really precedents in terms of the cases of Everton and Nottingham Forest. I say that those should be the cases, those should be the guidance that the panel uses to ascertain the number of points. And if you go through the Premier League authorities, Everton and Nottingham Forest, then that gets you to 6 points, not to 12. And that's before mitigation, right? Which might be hard in Leicester's situation, because I don't know how the panel are going to look at the 22-23 situation. They might say, well, this is now the second year you breached. You got away with it in the first year, and so we're throwing the book at you, and you can forget about significant mitigation. But the reason that I mean, you can actually read it on my Twitter. I can retweet it now, actually.
Please, cheers, thank you.
So people could have a look at why I believe that it should be 6 points if the panel look at the Premier League authorities before mitigation, rather than 12 points before mitigation. And in essence, they came up with a kind of policy between the two cases that said 3 points is the starting point, and then on top of that, 1 point for every 6.67 above the upper loss. And I think from memory, your upper loss in that season was something like 83 million quid. And I think you're looking at 20 million over. So I say another 3 points. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, in terms of mitigation, we don't know what they've done. So we've got no idea whether they cooperated or whether they played hardball. Let's assume they cooperated, and let's assume that they admitted it. I think in that scenario, they can expect 1 or 2 points off. And then the question is, do the panel see the prior breach in 22-23 as something that is an aggravating factor or not? So those are the sort of parameters, but I would say there is a risk that the arguments were lost, and that actually the Premier League bizarrely argued that the points deduction should be relative to the EFL metrics, and therefore much bigger, because the 12 points, they play more games, a win is worth less points, all of these sorts of things that they argue in the EFL cases. And I say it's worth less because there's more games, not because it's worth less than 3 points.
Yeah.
But these are the sorts of argument. I'd have to dig out all of the old arguments on why it's 12 points. But these are the sorts of things that they raise in the Everton and the Nottingham Forest case to distinguish between EFL cases and Premier League cases. Anyway, bottom line is, I think Leicester will have argued this is a Premier League case, it should be Premier League rules, in which case it should be Premier League penalties, in which case it should be less points. And it's unclear whether the other side, the Premier League, argued it should be EFL rules and EFL precedents and authorities. But I'm going for lower, not higher. Now, clearly, whatever is punished for 23-24 will have an impact on any punishment for 24-25, because the way it works is you'll effectively get some credit for the fact that you've already been punished for some of that period. So there's a bit too much to talk about for 24-25 because it's a bit too uncertain until we've got 23-24. But those are the parameters, those are the sorts of debates. Now, it might be, for example, if it goes against Leicester and they say, well, we think it's it should be EFL authorities, and therefore more points. That could be a great thing to base an appeal on, because they'll then go back to a Premier League appeal and say that the original Premier League Commission has got it wrong. It shouldn't be 6 points. It shouldn't be EFL rules. It's obviously a Premier League panel. Therefore, it should be Premier League rules and authorities, and therefore they've overpunished. We'll just have to wait and see. We won't know until we get the first initial decision from 23-24. We won't know whether they've got a realistic case for appeal. And by the way, it's likely that the appeal is going to be on fairly limited grounds and is not going to be able to unpick the numbers and the findings of the first commission. So if you were to look at any of the Nottingham Forest cases or the Everton cases, you'll see the way that they look at these situations at appeal and the sorts of things they will consider and those that they will not.
I hope you're listening, Tom. I'm going to ask you questions at the end.
And by the way, there's no way of this not being complex at this stage.
No.
You've got 3 different years of potential breach. We've only got the numbers for the breach. We've got details of the actual breach in 22-23. We've got a press article about the breach in 23-24. We don't know whether they defended themselves or not, and we don't know whether it's punished under EFL or Premier League rules, even though it's a Premier League commission. So there's all these different moving parts, which is why when I try and explain it, it's all really complicated.
I thought after we had successfully objected last time that the EFL and the Premier League had got themselves together and were working as one and had one set of rules.
Yeah, well, sort of, but that's bad news, because you're right in that what happened was, because they were so embarrassed by losing, they went to back to the clubs and specifically changed the rules that says now if a club is relegated from the league, that club shall, notwithstanding relegation, remain bound by rules E47 to E86 as if it was still a Premier League club until such time as it has complied with all of its obligations relating to its last season as a Premier League club. Now, what that means is that they changed the rules to make sure that if Leicester got relegated again, they couldn't argue the loophole, and they were captured by all of the Premier League PSR rules for the season in which they were relegated, which in your case is 24-25. So the reason that I'm even talking about 24-25 in the Premier League context is because they changed the rules to make sure specifically that it dealt with relegated clubs, all on the back of Leicester winning that case.
Tom, do you want to jump in with any questions?
I was just going to say, it seems like when the club moved that date as well and put themselves under EFL jurisdiction, it might have made things a bit more complicated as well, potentially, Stefan, because all of a sudden we were arguing we were in a league, we actually can have 40 million less of a loss than what you could previously. Do you feel that has actually, as an individual moment in history, made this even more complicated for the football club, or is it irrelevant?
No, I think probably not. I think you have to say they did an amazing job of arguing a very, very difficult case. I think people would still debate whether the panel got it right or not, but I don't think you could say Leicester did anything other than an amazing legal job, given the situation they found themselves in. They avoided a points deduction for 22-23, so theoretically, actually, they could have, on the back of that, then somehow sorted out the financial position such that they didn't breach again, and that would have been a major, major win. The problem was, ultimately that they failed again, right?
Yeah.
So, but I don't think you can say anything but positive things about, from a legal perspective, the job they did for 22-23.
I think I heard you say this on Talk Sport when you were talking about Leicester. Are we also going to get some extra points for some late handing over of financial figures?
I don't think I said it, but it's now pretty clear when you have to hand over the numbers, even though you've been relegated. So you did have to comply with the 31st of December situation this year. I think the situation of handing over numbers late, I don't know, I think that might have been the 22-23 season.
It was, yeah, it wasn't this season. It was because maybe it wasn't itself, but I thought you said it was an extra 3 points on top of the 6.
No, that wouldn't have been what I would have said. No, you wouldn't get a points penalty for late disclosure of the numbers. What would have happened was that you would have not had mitigation for doing everything right. So whereas Nottingham Forest got a chunky reduction of the penalty because they were seen to have cooperated fully, you wouldn't have been able to get that mitigation. So you wouldn't get additional points for something like that. You would just miss the opportunity to say you've been good operators. Yeah. So
which we obviously haven't, because I think we go right back to when we got promoted from the Championship. I think we got fined then for breaching, but we paid a fine rather than
that's
a
a long time ago. But you did breach then as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a different world though. People took breaches of financial fair play differently at that point, and also actually I think was dealt with in a more commercial way than this one's. You know, I don't think they can, because post Everton and Nottingham Forest, the precedent, not in terms of a legal precedent, but the precedent is set that if you have a breach of PSR, it's significant, it's a sporting advantage, and it's a sporting penalty. And sporting penalty means points.
Yeah. Right at the start, you did say there might be some good news. I'm just pleased.
Well, the good news is my view that the Premier League Commission will look at it under Premier League rules. So, unfortunately, you have had the good news.
Right.
And by the way, I might be wrong. But I think it makes a big difference. You know, as I've said before, it makes a big difference if the Premier League Commission adjudicate a breach of the rules and the PSR or the PNS, if they adjudicate that breach under the Premier League rules, or whether you have this perverse situation where the Premier League Commission is applying EFL rules. That seems to me to be a very odd situation. So, yeah, as I say, I might be wrong, but it seems to me much more likely that the Premier League Commission see it as a Premier League case, look at the Premier League authorities of Everton and Nottingham Forest, and go from there for what the metric should be for the points deduction. And that is going to be significantly advantageous to Leicester versus it being a pure EFL case.
I know that, again, I think I read somewhere that after the hearing that it had been passed to the Premier League. I just presume that was where it all goes anyway.
What do you mean by that?
As in, once the commission had done, the bit and had interviewed us, that it would then be passed to the Premier League as having the decision, whatever.
No, not really. No, the way it works is that the Premier League appoint the commission. So there will be somewhere an announcement from the Premier League. I'll try and get it on the screen as I'm talking. Let's see. Premier League statement. Is it 20th? Yeah, so if you look at the 20th of May statement, from the Premier League. It says, following an arbitration tribunal's decision regarding jurisdiction, Leicester City is now being referred to an independent commission for alleged breaches of the EFL PNS for 23-24. The club's obligation to provide its annual accounts to the Premier League by 31 December, and the club's obligation to provide full and complete and prompt assistance in relation to league inquiries, blah, blah, blah. And then, then if you go down to the bottom of that announcement, and remember this is all on the Premier League's website, it then says Premier League investigations and independent commissions. It then talks about the rules of the Premier League. So these are all Premier League rules. And then says, and then talks about the appointment of a Premier League independent commission. Again, all of this under Premier League rules. And then it says under Premier League rule W83(3), at the conclusion of proceedings, an independent commission's final decision will be made public via the Premier League's website. So that's why I say this will be a Premier League commission. Well, right. It clearly will be a Premier League commission. I mean, I've just read you what the announcement says. So yes. This is all on the Premier League's website. It is a Premier League commission. The question is, can a Premier League commission deviate in terms of its judgment of what the penalty should be from the Premier League rules? Well, I would say clearly not. It clearly has to look, it's a Premier League commission, it clearly has to look to the Premier League rules in working out what the penalty should be, but we don't know.
Stefan, we know you've got to go in a minute, but just quickly, is there going to be an announcement if Leicester aren't going to get one, or are we just waiting for an announcement where we might get one, or is silence actually for us pretty golden?
No, you'll get whatever the decision of this independent commission, they will set out their reasons for it in detail, like they did with Everton and Nottingham Forest, and it will be published on the Premier League website. And no news just means no decision, in exactly the same way that no news on Manchester City 115 means no decision as yet.
Very last question, because like I said, I know you took it down very quickly. If we get fined or points deduction, now, I know it's a 3-year period, and I know before Susan Whelan sort of left the club, that she sort of said it would take a few years for this to sort of work its through the system. So if we get that points deduction now, with everything that we've tried to do, as in getting rid of a lot of players, 80 million coming in the summer, sales, is it like starting again then, or is it sort of, could it still be worse for another couple of seasons?
Well, I think what she meant was that to right size the accounts and the profit and loss, it takes time, because clearly if you're short in 1 year where it's a 3-year rolling test, that flows through into future years. You can work your way through it by selling a lot of players for profit, but not necessarily just by selling players. If you make no profit from the sale of players, it makes no difference to your PSR, except to the extent that it reduces your wage bill. So what I'm not familiar with, and we'll know more when the accounts are published, and everybody's accounts will be published between now and the end of March. But what we need to see is what's happened to the cost base of the club, what happened to the revenue, what's happened, is there which I assume there is, a relegation clause in all of the contracts for the players that were remaining. And then, so you have to then see whether they've started to become profitable enough to outweigh the previous seasons. Yes. And then, of course, there's the question of what league are you going to be in, and depending on what league you're in, what regime you have to match up to. Because, of course, the Premier League is going to go to squad cost control next season, which is a different way of looking at things. It may or may not work for Leicester. I don't know. I haven't done the numbers yet. I mean, I think what we need to see is, we need to have a feel for where they are. But I think where probably Leicester are going to get to is the unexpected relegation a few I don't know when it was, 3 years ago, let's say, that was a big problem, because when it's unexpected, the whole club's cost base is set up for a different world, and then you get relegated and you can't really quickly right size everything.
Yeah.
So then you then breach, and then that breach then flows through into future years, and you have to work it out of the system. And that's why she's always said that it'll take a while to work through. I guess the good news on that is, if you breach, let's say you end up breaching 3 years on the bounce. Well, you got away with 22, 23. And I think that is the right framing. I mean, you did just get away with it through good legal argument, not because you didn't breach. You did breach. So you get away with 22, 23. You get some kind of penalty for 23, 24. You then get some other penalty, let's say for 24, 25, but it takes account of the penalty you had for 23, 24. So you don't have this double hit.
Yeah.
And then if in the worst case scenario you got hit again for 25, 26, and let's say it happens just for sake of discussion, there'll be 2 years of which you've already been punished for out of the 3. So the last bit, either way, shouldn't be very significant. And then it's washed through, right?
Yeah.
And then you can start to rebuild in a new reality. But that's why I think she says it takes a long time.
Right. So we did have 90 million one year, but I think that may well have dropped off now from the 3 years.
The 90 million of what? Player trading profit?
We were 90 million in breach, I think, one year. Were we not?
19, I think it will have been.
Right.
Over the limit. You wouldn't have breached by 90. If you'd have breached by 90, they'd have deducted you 50 points.
Oh, fair enough. It's my age, Stefan, look, I know you got to go quickly. Tom, are you all right? Are you anything?
Yeah, thank you very much for your time, Steph. I really appreciate you coming on the channel to try and help us
it's
out.
so complicated. I know it is.
I think they make it complicated so that you can't ask questions.
Well, we'll know a bit more. I think wait for the decision. When you get the decision, then we'll actually know a lot more, and then you'll be able to piece together. You'll be able to piece together what the future might look like with a bit more precision, and you'll also have a better understanding of how everybody's looking at the situation as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, appreciate your time. And take care, stay careful, stay well, and take care.
Cheers. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. Oh, mate, I couldn't get my words out then.
I was going to say, it's definitely a very complicated situation, everyone in the chat, isn't it? And like Stefan said, the moving parts involved in this. And I think actually, Chris, it's going to get more complicated because the Football League is going to be sticking with a PSR model, while, of course, next year, or 26-27, the Premier League are moving to a SCR model, which is about you're limiting your spending. So it's not going to get any simpler anytime soon, is it, guys?
It isn't. And look, I thought we'd overspent 90 million. I'm sure I read that somewhere. Maybe I'm wrong. Probably am.
We probably did 1 year, but then you're allowed up to 70, aren't you? I mean, the Premier League, Chris, I think is 100.
Oh, that's probably the 90 then. Yeah. That might be the difference. Yeah.
But the problem is it's 3 years, and we had 105 as a target over 3 years. In the Championship, that goes down by 40 million to, I believe, 65 million. So that's where the complication comes as well with our relegation. Twice.
But do you think that if the Premier League are changing it for next year, which they are, the EFL, which is your league, your Championship, League 1, League 2, are not, we're going to then go back to the process of, well, we were there that time and then we were there that time. Why don't they just all get together? I mean, look, they've been embarrassed by us once before, and this is what makes me think that they're really going to go for us, because we did make them look stupid. And as Nick DeMarco said, there isn't loopholes. Do not exist. It's just badly written laws.
Yeah, that's it.
We've always said that, don't we? The guy that wrote that for the Premier League must have got the biggest bollocking going. But and I can see why they've gone to a points deduction, because some of these clubs would just pay the fine like it was. Well, we did that first year, didn't we? But I'm just thinking, why don't they just all get together as one body and go, these are the rules? Now, yes, I know there's only 20 clubs in League One, sorry, in the Premier League, and there's 24 and therefore it changes. So why not do it as a percentage?
Yeah, exactly. You can see the argument for that, can't you? Because it would definitely keep things a lot more in line and make things a bit more transparent for clubs, because it is that complicated. You argue it's going to take some really expert people in finance to keep on top of it a bit as well. Yeah. And also the interesting thing is, of course, is that, the Championship and the Football League is still going to be in a model where you could do what Leicester did and spend 107% on your earnings if you wanted to, which is what got us in the mess and is why they put in this SCR, which limits your spending in the Premier League to 80% now. I'm pretty sure, Chris, reading between the lines, that's because of what we did, because we basically were gambling. Obviously, we're keeping our place in the European football pyramid, be it the Conference League or anything else, which brings you in extra money. And like Stefan said there, of course, we had that surprise relegation a year after being in Europe, and we planned to obviously stick around that top 10 at least and top 7. So,
I mean, how do you feel? I mean, we were discussing earlier in the season. You were quite happily and quite right in a way, going like, I think we're going to get away with it. I don't think we're, And then that story came out via the iPaper, Football League World, that if we've not heard by a certain date, of which Stefan, was part of that story. And then I started to think, yeah, well, maybe it was the 14th of January. It's like the 20th now. Maybe we have got away with it. Well, then Stefan, obviously not on purpose, just come and pissed on our party, and we're back to thinking, yeah, how many are we going to get?
Well, it's interesting because Stefan confirmed that there's an interpretation element, isn't there? Because I brought up the El Kanoush transfer in particular because, like, with moving of the accounting dates we did for James Maddison's transfer for one to bring that money into that season, I wondered if there was an argument when I knew it was about 20 million for my maths I was looking at, that we were looking at as the breach. So I thought, well, if we can include this guaranteed transfer, because it's the only reason we probably agreed the loan deal, to know we're getting that money we need. And like he said, it's an interpretation if that can be included into that, to get around it as well, because there's a rolling element to this as well, which makes the 3-year cycle quite a fascinating way to word it.
But why do we have to have interpretations? Why don't they come out and go, you do not count that money until that money comes in the bank?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. You'd argue that they've got to get a little bit more tighter on the actual rules of it. I mean, this is the thing with why there's lawyers and solicitors, because any sort of law you can argue there's an interpretation of, and that's what creates the whole legal system, doesn't it?
Yeah. Look, we know it's complicated anyway, because like when KDH went to Chelsea, they gave us 30 million, but that was over, they had a 6-year contract, so it was 5 million a year. Which will count towards PSR. We then bought Michael Golding from them. Do you remember him, everybody? Michael Golding. We then bought him for 5 million. They sold Kieran Dewsbury Hall at the end of his first year with them. So basically, Kieran Dewsbury Hall didn't, apart from wages, didn't cost them a penny.
No, and it's interesting though, isn't it? Because like Stefan said, you can announce that as being, say, the 5 million on the year, or you can announce it as the whole amount, and Newcastle and other clubs have done such a thing as well. So at least I'd hope the club announced it as the full amount, because like I say, that's another mistake we could have made in regard to our own personal financing. And look, we rightly got questions to ask the football club about why they've not been a little bit more in control of the finances. It seems to be reactively trying to bat away these problems, isn't it?
I think the problem as well with Susan Whelan going, it's a case of we don't know what was done at the time. Because, if you listen to, I'd heard that Susan Whelan hadn't spoken to John Rudkin for a year, and then somebody came in and said Susan Whelan hadn't spoken to Top for a year. I mean, it's like Billy Smart's circus, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it seems a little bit very disconnected, doesn't it? It seems like there's people at the top that might be, I'm not saying, I mean, I don't know these people, obviously, but they might be putting down these pressures onto people, like when Susan Whelan was here, maybe even managers, like we've questioned recently about standards and what we're achieving, right? But that disconnect and the fact it's not all on the same page is what's probably created a lot of this problem, because it is about ownership of that. And if you can't communicate between certain departments in your business, be it a football club or be it, a retail environment, then you're going to encounter big problems like this, aren't you?
All the time. I've got to be careful what I say here, because last time I said along these lines, I had a letter from somebody who whose information was retracted. All his information was retracted. So I'm going to be very careful here. I was told by somebody in a similar position to Stefan. It wasn't Stefan, it was somebody in a similar sort of role, so you can maybe work that out, that Susan Whelan hadn't sent in the accounts on time and they were sat on her desk, which I was allegedly, I'll say that allegedly.
I think that has been publicly confirmed if you look at the actual accounts for the when you submit your accounts to the government, because you can see the Leicester accounts. I'm pretty sure it said they were late.
I'm not going to take any chances because I haven't got a good solicitor. So I'm going to be I'm still going to go down the alleged rule.
Yeah, well, I agree. Allegedly, everyone. Allegedly in the chat as well.
But and look, I'm not having a go at Susan Whelan. I wish Susan Whelan had stayed and John Rudkin had fucked off, but we've not. It was the other way round. And but I'm sure it was Stefan that said that, on TalkSport. I'm going to dig that out. I'm sure he said that we get an extra 3 points for handing in our details late. I mean, Scott's saying now, are we going to get points this season and then, double points? Apparently what he's just said is that whatever points we get deducted this year, if we're still in breach next year, then this year's deduction will be taken into account. So let's say, for example, it's 12 points this year. Next year, it's 9 points, and they may say, well, they've already paid 12, added points deduction this year, so we'll just give you a 3 point deduction or whatever. So, but it just shows that, to me, what a mess, a total and utter mess, the EFL and the Premier League are in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything like this when it was all one thing did we? It's just why can't. And look, I don't know what your thoughts were on this football ombudsman that the Labour Party was sort of talking about putting in. I think it's a damn good idea.
I think it's going to have to probably be something they look at, because also you've got to look at this SCR thing and go, Europe's got a different figure to the Premier League. The Premier League's going to run, I believe, at 80 to 85% of your income. Europe's running at 70, Chris. So there's also going to be an issue there with English clubs in particular in Europe who are going to have to, get their way underneath that target. So it causes big problems. Look, Chelsea failed in Europe, didn't they? And then they didn't fail with the Premier League because of some clever accounting methods. So, yeah, it is remarkably complicated. But I think the thing it shows us today is, because Stefan did obviously say as well, there is a chance we could breach again for next year, which is going to be which probably shows why we are looking at, trying to get rid of so many big earners as possible here. And it's possibly why these rumours this week have popped up, and maybe Fataru moving on, and maybe even LTiDtv I've heard this week. And of course, they are big players for our club right now.
They are. And like you say, interesting he said that, because I think a lot of people, and I'll probably fall into this category as well, thinking like, right, let's take it now and then it's all done with and put to bed. It isn't, And look, they do have to have something in it. I was looking back at my old industry last night, funnily enough, which was the travel business. And when I was doing the travel business during the 80s and early 90s, there was at least one tour company went bust every week. And there was no sort of, there was guarantees, but it was just badly sort of done, and football's the same. It's going the same way. I know it's a business and what have you, but it's not a sport anymore, is it?
No, it's certainly not. And Scott's raised a great question here. It's interesting because start the next season on minus points there. But the interesting thing that Stefan really highlighted for me there, which I'm glad I managed to sneak into the end, is I wanted to know, are we going to hear anything? Or if we do pass, are they just not going to say anything? Because, in theory, if you're a club that isn't under that sort of thing, you're not going to hear anything anyway because you've passed, right? So the interesting thing is, like Stefan said, it hasn't happened yet, and it was anticipated to happen on the 14th of January. So we're talking now 6 days ago, aren't we? So the interesting thing is, if it comes later on, say it comes into April or May, that wouldn't be fair, particularly of the EFL, you could argue, to put it on us this season, especially we were 9 points above the drop and it just relegated us. So maybe it will carry over, I believe, Scott. In that case, this is the element of interpretation like Stefan was getting at, and timing, right?
I've got to say, if it does mean that we've got to sell some of the big players, then because nobody's bigger than the club.
No, the club's got to survive.
Yes, so if you've got to sell Fataru, and look, I'm the one that's saying he should go, and and I've forgotten what I was going to say now because let me just read this Twitter because it's what it was took my mind off it. Robert Watts, it's just a fair point. This is on Twitter, and thanks to everybody sort of retweeting the links and everything. So thank you very, very much for that. He's got, not being horrid, but this man has not got anything right yet on Leicester City. I have heard him loads of times on TalkSport, and not one thing has come true on what he has said. And then Craig's replied to that. This guy may be right, but he just speculates. It's what we all do. Unless I go and get, I don't know who's the head of the Premier League now, if I get him in and we'll put him down and interview him, these are the only people that know. We're not saying to him what is going to happen.
No.
What you think is going to happen. And he's got a better idea, no disrespect, Robert and Craig, he's probably got a lot better idea as what might happen than you. And that's no disrespect, but when he was he lost me totally when he was going through and quoting all these different things and what have you. That's why we have these people on, not because they know the answers, because nobody knows the answer.
No, it was definitely enlightening, though, to hear because you understand it. I mean, the thing that's interesting as well is, of course, there's elements of football finance we know where they won't actually give you points deductions for it, but they will fine you. So if there's other things that Leicester have done wrong, like because Chelsea had this where they got a certain amount of million fine, didn't they, Chris? Not just a points deduction. So it depends really on what remit and what area of the club it is where the breach has happened, because there might be a chance maybe we just pay a fine for some of these things as well. And they don't tally up as extra points, which would be helpful in this circumstances.
I think for the fine, I think that was because it was from the old owners, wasn't it? And they admitted it. They went straight to the door. We found, 74 million, whatever it was, that didn't come out before. So the first opportunity they had, they admitted it, and it wasn't down to the current owners; it was down to the previous. Look, there's so many. Look, let me ask you a question, Tom. Is Donald Trump going to invade Greenland?
No, we changed the topic a little bit.
No, the answer is, do you know?
I don't know at all, mate.
You don't know, exactly. You can speculate, and I could ask, let's say I get Keir Starmer on here, and I could ask Keir Starmer, is Donald Trump going to invade Greenland? He won't know, but he will know more than, no disrespect, he will know more than you do.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why we would get him on, because he's in a better position, and that's why we had Stefan in. Not because he has all the answers. He doesn't, but he understands these things a hell of a lot better than the average football fan.
Certainly a lot more than I do, because I did a lot of reading on it, and there was things that he brought up there that I wasn't particularly even considering. I was adding more moving parts. It's like a simple toy car. We've now added extra wheels and suspension on because we weren't aware of it. So, but what's interesting from today is just how concerning it is, Chris, actually, because I was hoping we'd get this all together today, and what we'd hear is, well, we think it's going to be sorted by this date, and then you should be all right. But the worrying thing is this is something now that goes back 3 years beyond, doesn't it? Because we had the mishap of relegation and falling out of Europe and all the rest of it. But it seems to me still like we're not fully getting to grips on it, are we? If you see what I mean. And that is a big thing the club's got to get right. And my worry is it's the balance now. If we do get a points deduction, maybe we're going to have to sell Fatawu or whoever else to get ourselves out of this mess. If we end up in a relegation battle, having sold our best players and having to rely on the academy players like we've been asking to see a little bit more progression of course, we might end up going into a relegation dogfight with a spoon as a weapon, so we could end up with another relegation, and that's a less amount of PSR we can hit because it'll be less in League One that's going to be in the Championship at a 60 million loss.
Yes, it is. Look, we're not going to get back up to the Premier League anytime soon. Let's be honest, And if somehow we were to somehow end up in the playoffs and win the playoff, we would be coming straight back down because, again, with the situation as it is, would we have money to invest?
Yeah, do you know what the sad thing is, though, Chris? Like, we got to sit here and realise, even if we go up and come straight back down, that would still be in the best interest of the football club because of that money. Because money is all that matters now, even if we can compete.
Yeah, but then we're not getting the full parachute payment, are we? Because the first time you come down, you get it for 3 years. But we went back up, so the parachute payment stopped. And then when we come back down, we got what we would have got the second year. Because, of course, it's A, B, and C for the 1, 2, 3 years, A being the most. Then the second time it came down, if we were to go up and then come back down again, we wouldn't get the A payment. We'd be getting the C payment. So,
that's true, but the Premier League revenue is going to equate to so much more than a C payment, a parachute payment, so it'll be worth doing. Don't get me wrong, it makes football a horrible thing, but actually just getting in the Premier League like Luton did, just bank the money, and unfortunately for them, they ended up down in League One. But there's going to be a lot of that going forward, I believe, because of the disparity.
When you look at the Lutons of this world and what have you, and we've had 10 years up there. We won the Premier League, we won the FA Cup. We've had quite a taste of it. It's not like we went up and came straight back down again. We've not done a Burnley, we've not done a Sheffield United sort of thing. I'm just looking at this and thinking, well, look, he thinks we've probably breached for. Well, this one's the 23-24, and he thinks we've breached, and he also thinks we're probably going to be breaching for 24-25.
Yeah, I'm hoping 24-25 will be able to maybe not breach because we've already started the process. But like you say, it's just an interpretation of it, Chris, isn't it? That is the difficulty in the situation. All we know is the club has got to get a grip on this, because it's all well and good to be ambitious. And look, I do appreciate the we'll spend 107% and kind of gamble a bit. But you've got to, if you're going to gamble, realise you can't put yourself to be broke. You've got to have the backup plan when that doesn't work out, and this just once again reinforces how we've had a one-track mind with the football club, thinking that the good days are always going to last, and then eventually we've ended up in a position where we're facing a real difficult financial situation that's going to knock on for years.
A lot of people, well, I know Kate, I'm not having to go at Kate, but I know Kate was saying, like, well done, Top, for fighting it and winning it and what have you, but they were always going to come back after us.
Well, they were, exactly, and you've still got to have that backup plan. I mean, the thing is, you look at clubs like Brighton, I think they've always got a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. I think we've barely had a plan A at times, which is the problem. I mean, it's a leadership element again, and if we don't learn from it, Chris, this is not going to go away, and this nightmare is going to be a complete cyclical thing for us as we completely circle down the drain, because we cannot compete unless we've got ourselves straight.
Do you think then, we'll it's coming up for an hour, so we won't go on with this much longer, and the one question I want, when you're thinking, right, I'm going to ask this question, and then he carried on, and I've forgotten what the question was. And of course, we are extending loans with this Maccabi Bank, whatever it is, in Australia, and we're doing that against parachute payments.
Because it's meant to be against future Premier League revenue, because the idea was to get straight back up this year like we did previously, but unfortunately that hasn't worked out to complicate things further.
So they've done it against parachute payments. That, again, are we gambling money? I'm not saying that we will go into a Sheffield Wednesday situation, but we've got owners. Well, we're owned personally by Top's family. We're not owned by King Power. I think when one person owns a club, have they got as much money as, he's going to say, well, 20 million for a player, 30 million for this player. Hang on, my fortune's going down a bit here because you're not getting anything necessarily back. Are we going to end up possibly in a Sheffield Wednesday position where he just says, right, I'm off, and we're going to be left with, holding a hot potato?
Well, I don't think they would just leave. I think they'd fight it to the bitter end, because I think that's part of the way they work as organisation and people. What concerns me is just seeing what's happening with King Power, because while King Power is separate, that is directly linked to Top and his success, which then provides his private money. Right? King Power has pulled out of sponsoring and hosting a lot of their polo events. And if you think that is a big thing for them, especially in the culture of Thailand, where they get to, use that money to really, show off. And if they haven't got the money to do that, which is something they really like to do and something that really promotes their brand, it does make you worry about what is the full effect that's happened on the King Power brand. And is that going to tie into a difficult time for the families? It is all linked, unfortunately. And it does concern me, Chris. Unfortunately, it might happen somewhere down the line, but obviously we're just praying it won't happen.
Is he looking to sell, do you think? Should he be looking to sell?
Well, I think the thing is, I think you can argue that from the perspective of the ownership, and I'll say we can't really speak, we can only speculate, but I would speculate that the idea would be that you wouldn't want to be viewed as giving up on it, especially something that was built so well by the family previously. Obviously, we got all the memorial site, because of the awful helicopter crash. There's a lot of ties that are going to remain at this football club to Top and his family, irrelevant of what happens, right? Because of the history. So I don't think they're going to want to give in, which I appreciate. But like you say, I mean, if you're going to sell the football club, now it's probably at its lowest financial value because of everything that's going on as well. So it's a difficult one to answer, Chris. It
But
really is.
it's just the same as selling a player. We might not get much for Harry Winks, but what we save in wages on Harry Winks, and Top may look at it and go, all right, I've got to write some money off, but I'm only writing this much off if I leave it any longer. But also, you got to look at it and go, is it a somebody that might want to come in and buy it might look at it and go, this is the club that has been up here. All right, I'm not going to use the word sleeping giant, but why are clubs like Leeds being bought, Burnley being bought, Sunderland? These teams were top flight teams, and somebody might look at Leicester and go, yeah, with the right,
I mean, the only good thing is
cheap.
Yeah, the only good thing we got is that the debt, a lot of the debt. There is some debt now, obviously, with this loan from the bank, obviously, which we're not going to be able to pay off because we're going to stay in the Championship at the best. But there is the fact that there isn't a lot of previous debt hanging over the club because a lot of it has been cleared by the family, which we have to appreciate. I mean, I know it's not been run really well, but it's not as if we're Manchester United, where the Glazers have done the opposite of this, where they're now something like £1 billion in the red, and they're just running off that interest. They haven't done that at Leicester. They have just paid it off and turned it into equity and shares. So that is the good news with it, because there is less for us to lose, but there's still the fact that we just can't seem to get on top of this, and then it does make you wonder, is that liquid cash to pay off that loan in one particular instance available now? I'm not so sure it is when King Power's been going through difficulties. Yes.
I mean, look, Daedalus there has said, and I can always pronounce that wrong, Daedalus, however, that we'll call him D. D said doesn't think we'll get one for this season. We will for 23-24, but we will for 24-25. I'd say it was the other way around, if anything.
I don't think that'll be a bad outcome.
I can't see that happening, but I could see it the other way. Could we see King Power looking to sell either the football clubs? See, that's a very good point. Why are they holding on to Laven? And this is no disrespect to OH Laven at all, but they're not a Leicester City. They haven't gone in there. King Power bought Laven, and Laven have gone and won the Belgian league or anything like that. So why are they holding on to that club?
Well, you can argue that, of course, the league revenue as well is not even a pimple on a bum when it comes to the Premier League or the English football game in general. I mean, the Championship now has revenue of 85 million a year. It's not 180. It's still half of what the Premier League is, but that's still a whacking lot of cash in comparison even to the French First Division, Chris, which isn't really at that level nowadays. So no, I think there is an argument there. If we were to see that happen, that would be the first thing to go, okay, there is maybe something bigger going on here. If we would see, say, Leuven put up, for sale. Like maybe the women's team, Chris. I know it sounds bizarre, but obviously you could even look at the women's team and go, well, that's something you could maybe move into different ownership as a start.
Could we not sell it to ourselves?
I want to see if we had an hour with Stefan, I was going to dig into this about Chelsea.
So many questions, but look, I appreciate. I mean, look, we have Kieran Maguire come on here a lot as well, and he's another one that's kind of he'll sit there. Love him to bits, Kieran, and Stefan as well. But Kieran will sit there and he literally has his table full of spreadsheets. And as he's talking to you, he's referring to this, that, and it's like, that's what you're sort of interviewing them for that sort of knowledge. Look, I think we'll probably round it up now because we've been going on for an hour. Thank you to everybody, like I say, that's been retweeting and messaging on X. Retweet. It doesn't feel right saying re-X'd, retweeted everything. And just in case anybody does follow us on Blue Sky, just to let you know, I've come off Blue Sky because it was basically a waste of time. So it's just Facebook and X and a bit on TikTok as well. They have to do it by the end of this month, surely, because they can't all put it over to next season.
Well, exactly, that's it. I mean, because the thing is, I still think, like, I know we've fallen out with the Premier League in particular, with how we have treated them, perhaps as they view it with the financial situation, right? But I've said this all season, it's an incredibly bad look. Say we get to March and we are 12 points clear and we get hit with a 12-point deduction that drops us into that last relegation place, and we get relegated. We've got nothing we can do to really get around it. Then we're kind of left in the situation we're in, and we just have to hope we survive. But that would be what you call a dick move, right? And you'd hope that would not happen, but there is that worry, obviously, about the level of professionalism. This is why, because it's so behind closed doors, it is really difficult for any of us to kind of ascertain how it's going to go. But at least we know we're going to hear something, because my thing was, okay, it's past the 14th. We might not hear anything, which means we're okay.
I did love your optimism. Are we thinking no news is good news?
Well, I thought it was worth asking, because they wouldn't say...
It was. But I was giggling to myself. And I'm sorry I didn't get you on more than I did want to get you on more.
No, it's fine.
It actually answered questions. They weren't short answers, were they? They're what we call Brad answers. But, it
was very insightful, Chris. That's the most important thing. I think it was very insightful for us and the audience, wasn't it, guys? But don't forget to hit the like button today as well. I think that was a really insightful video. Make sure you tell everyone to come and have a look, because we learnt a lot, I felt, as Leicester fans.
I'm going to repost it now anyway with the links and what have you. But, we were speculating. We'll still speculate, but probably not speculate as much as we were doing. Look, it goes with the territory. You want to support Leicester City? This is what you got to put up with. They always say, don't they? Supporting Leicester is a roller coaster ride, and we are definitely on one of the downward spirals at the moment. Just hope at the bottom we go whoop, and back up again. Who knows? Tom, we're going to be back, everybody. At 6 o'clock, is it? Because 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock for an 8 o'clock kickoff, and we'll be doing the watch along for Wrexham and Leicester. And this may carry on over into that show as well. Who knows? Who knows? But why Coventry fans so rude? I mean, so rude, man. Look, every club's got them. I spoke to a Coventry fan doing the preview, and he was such a nice guy. He bantered me, I bantered him, and we wished each other well at the end of the show, which is how football should be. Every club, and we've got the idiots just as much as every other club. It goes with the territory, unfortunately. I will see you at 7 o'clock. Go off and have a cold shower and a nice brew. I will see you then. Everybody, please subscribe if you're new and you just found us for the first time. Viewing figures look really good. Thank you very much. So please do subscribe. Click that like button. Click the notification bell. Then you'll never miss another show. $1.99 if you want to become a member. A month. I mean, that's not even the price of half a pint. And don't forget, if you're on your mobile, to hype us. I will say, because I've got to line it up first of all, because I was quicker than I thought I was then. I will see you, Tom, and everybody else tonight at 6 o'clock.
7 o'clock. Nearly nailed it, Chris. You were nearly the most professional of the day then. You messed it up again. 7 o'clock, everyone. Don't miss us. Hit the bell. We'll see you then.
7 o'clock. Good night.
Thanks for watching. These videos are tremendous. You better like them too, or I'll be back.
This podcast is proud to be part of the TalkSport Fan Network. TalkSport. Powered by fans.
That will conclude this evening's entertainment.